Hi everybody, and thanks for viewing this fly tying tutorial. The pattern that I'm going to be tying for you today is called the Zuddler, but I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that as this video goes on. I was collecting all of my information, putting together my materials, and just looking over the general pattern to tie this Zuddler for YouTube when I got an email from a gentleman by the name of Sean Mooney. Sean's a fellow tyer like a lot of us, and he comments on a lot of my videos. And he had brought to my attention a younger tyer by the name of Jordan Lee. He wanted me to check out some of Jordan's fly tying videos and comment back towards Jordan. So I pulled up the video, and sure enough, it was the Zuddler. And Jordan, if you're watching this, you did an excellent job tying that fly. In fact, I kind of had to even modify my own to ensure that I was showing something new for YouTube. Well, watching Jordan tie kind of brought me back to my own beginning days as a fly tyer. I happened to be at my family's house recently, and I found my first fly tying vise. Looking back at this vise, just a regular C-clamp model, no name to it. I don't know what brand or what model it even is. I remember it really couldn't hold small flies and it really couldn't hold large flies. Yet it did an excellent job, and it helped to really bring this passion out of me regarding fly tying. So looking back at that and then now watching Jordan's videos, it really just got me thinking about all the encouragement that I've received along the years and how it's kind of pushed me to become a better fly tyer. So with that said, I went to comment back on Jordan's video, and then I realized that I really like when people create video responses for my own videos. Hence, I'm going to create a little video response for Jordan's pattern. What I'm going to do right now, I'm going to show you one of the Zuddlers that I've just tied. I'm going to go over it. I'm going to talk about some of the materials that I've substituted from the original. I'll talk a little bit about the history behind the fly, and then I will actually get into the tutorial. So the next thing I'm going to show you is the actual pattern already tied. All right, so we have a look at the finished Zuddler. This pattern was created by two gentlemen by the names of Joe Emery and John Rode. I believe they originally created this pattern to catch Great Lakes steelhead, but it has now really just taken storm on our game, and it's just used for so many different species of fish. Well, if we look at the name, the Zuddler, it gets created by putting two really just popular flies together. First, we have a zonker. So this is a zonker rabbit strip. It's basically just a strip of rabbit fur. It's tied in zonker style, which means it's extended out towards the tail, it's tied in at the back of the shank, and then it's brought over the top and tied in one more time. It just gives lots of natural movement in the water. The front part of it takes on that muddler component. A muddler consists of a pattern that has just basically a deer hair wing going around with a collar that's trimmed short. We add a cone head to this, and it allows the collar to be trimmed flush with that cone head, and just puts a really nice profile on the front of this fly, which basically will look like some type of bait fish in the water. As I mentioned before, this could be just a ton of different ways. There's just a myriad of differences that exist. You can add crystal flash to the tail, to the sides, and as a throat. You can add different materials in the body. You can also have rubber legs coming out. I've also seen differences in the colors of the deer hair. Plus, you can just, basically go with any color combination you'd like. I'm going to be tying black in this pattern. As I mentioned before, I'm going to vary just a little bit from the original. I'm going to show you a few ways to make it a little bit simpler. In terms of colors, I really prefer black, white, chartreuse, get with some hot pinks occasionally, but there's just a myriad of colors out there as well. Use that word twice today. And really, don't be afraid to experiment and see what works in your natural waters. So let me get the hook and everything set up, and then I'll get this fly tying tutorial started after I show you all the materials. Now that you've seen the materials, let's get started on this actual pattern. I'm using an Allen fly fishing hook. It's the S403 streamer hook. The 3 in that means that it's a 3 extra long shank. Just a perfect hook for this. I'm using a size 8 today. Adding to this this Allen fly fishing hook, I'm going to add a little bit of 020 lead wire. I'm going to get around 15 wraps or so on this. Just pinch the lead wire off. When I first started experimenting with this pattern, I would leave the wire back a couple millimeters from this cone head, kind of like this, to allow a little bit more, allow all those materials to be tied in closer to the head. Once I've done that a few times, once I did that a few times, I realized there wasn't a huge advantage to leaving it back. So don't be afraid to just push that up against the cone head. And the cone head that I'm using today is just a smoke or a black colored cone head. I'm going to add a little bit of 6/0 black thread. I'm going to use 6/0 because you can really just bear down on this thread. I'm sorry, you can bear down the thread whenever you're tying in some of the other components, such as the deer hair. I'm just going to create just a nice little base over all this lead wire just to ensure that it's tied in properly and it's not going to go anywhere. It shouldn't twist too much on me, but I still want to ensure that it's not going anywhere. I'm also going to create just a little ramp leading up to it. I'm going to go to the very back. Just stop right above the point of the hook. So right around there is the perfect spot. One little tip that I want to give you, every now and then you might see the ends of your lead wire sticking up. If so, just take just a flat set of pliers, and just push down on that and bend it right into place, and then you won't see it and it won't interfere with anything else you have going on with this pattern. All right, well, as I mentioned, this is going to be using a Zonker rabbit strip. I like to have these pre-cut out. It just makes it easier. Then you don't have to worry about snipping it off whenever you get to the head of the hook, creating a lot of bulk up there. So I just have a little piece to measure it. I basically want it, the length of the hook shank, maybe just a little bit more, simply because whenever you tie it in at the back and you bring it around, you're gonna lose a little bit whenever it goes over your body material. Then whenever you get to you just pull to the very back, you'll notice all that material is going in one direction. You want to keep that one direction going towards the back, towards the tail. I'm just gonna pull a little piece out and just create a little opening so I can tie it in at that opening. It's okay if your Zonker strip goes a little bit past the bend of the hook, because the water will kind of even everything out when it's in there. I might place just one little, not the most aggressive thread wrap. Then a second, I'm going to add a little more pressure. Third, fourth, fifth. By this time, I'm really placing a lot of pressure on my thread. It's 6/0. I don't have to worry about going anywhere, and I really want to ensure that that is locked in place. So you can really bear down on this thread. I pull it back, put a few wraps in front of it, and then I'm going to add a piece of brassy-sized black wire. I'm going to tie this in similar to a lot of the patterns that John Barr ties, and I'll show you what I'm going to do with this in a moment. But for now, I'm just going to lock it in place. It's going to be adding a little bit of weight, but it's also going to be separating my Zonker strip, and it will be protecting my body material. Speaking of which, the body material I'm going to be using, if you didn't already notice, will be a Marabou Feather. This is really just an old school technique that I was taught years ago. So I'm just going to grab just a nice little Marabou Feather. It doesn't really matter the length of the fibers. So I have just a normal little plume right here. I pull some of these bottom pieces off. I'm going to be tying this in by the tips. Then I'm actually going to simply wrap this up and use this for the body. Now that's one great and easy way to tie this pattern, or to tie in Marabou. Another technique that I was taught was to create a dubbing loop. Place these feathers in the dubbing loop, spin it, and then wrap it forward that way, and it creates just a really awesome looking body, and it just has lots of movement in the water. But like I said, I'm just going to keep this one just a little easy. I'm going to tie it in by the tips, wrap back to that Zonker strip. Okay, once I get that locked in, I'll just tie these tips down just a little bit, but I'm not going to worry too much about those. The Marabou itself is going to be covering those. Then I bring it up to the front and stop. So with this Marabou, I'm simply going to just wrap it around, kind of like you would a piece of chenille. It's only going to take a few wraps to get up there, and I don't want to crowd the head too much, so I'm probably going to back it off at this point. Tie it in and trim it away. And you'll notice immediately that body just has so much going on, it just looks like it's already moving. There's already just a little bit of breathability to it. Next, I'm going to take my Zonker strip. I'm going to pull it down. I already have it cut to length, so I can simply tie it off right there. I can really get aggressive with it and wrap back just a little bit, because I do have to leave room to tie in all of my muddler components. Well, I have this piece of brassy copper wire, the ultra wire, just hanging on back there. So I'm just going to take all these Zonker strips, pick them up just a little bit. In the back, I'm going to make my first wrap. Then I just start moving this forward. I'm basically going to be ribbing this fly. I'm doing this for a couple reasons. First, I want to separate some of these Zonker strips, and it'll just allow them to move in the water just a little bit more, and they won't all be bound together. Next, it's going to protect that Marabou body. Marabou is a material that can be damaged quite easily with with the teeth of certain fish, and I want to ensure that this fly is going to stick together and really just stand the test of time. Then when I get up to this head, I'm just going to place just a couple wraps. This wire is not going to go anywhere. Okay. Now I have everything protected. Nothing's going to be going anywhere. I'll push that little piece down. Then you can see how these Zonker strips are really nice and separated. At some point when I'm tying this in with that marabou, you'll have extra fibers just jutting out. If you do have extra fibers, don't be afraid to just literally take them with your fingers and pull them off. You can get those extra marabou pieces out of there, or you can even leave them in. Now at this point, you could have tied in some rubber legs halfway up. You can tie in rubber legs going along the sides if you really prefer rubber legs, so you can just have them coming out from right here. If you want to tie in a little black crystal flash for a throat, going along the sides for cheeks, that would be excellent as well. I am not going to. I want a really slender, sleek profile, so I'm just going to simply go right into the Zuddler component of this. To tie the wing, I'm going to use this really fine deer hair. This is considered deer hair that on the label it was called short and fine, the color black. What's nice about this, I almost don't even need to stack it. Whenever I cut it, it comes out so straight, and I can just line it right up and put it in there. Because it's so short and fine though, I'm going to do a couple things. I'm still going to pinch it, pull out all the excess, and I'm going to put my first wrap right on top. I'm going to lock that one in right on top. And then that's going to be basically, I'm going to be using that one as a reference for all of my other wraps. So I might then go onto the side, and I typically will do this about 4 times. I might cut out another little section. Same thing as before. Line all the tips up, pull the excess out, use my initial piece as my reference point, hold this in with just my thumb, get a loose wrap over it, and then tighten it up. I have 2 of the 4 completed. I'll go to the bottom. You can see I'm just working my way around. I tend to use less on the top and the bottom. So again, I might just line it up with my prior reference point. In this case, I'm just going to try to pinch it just a little bit. Loose wrap, then more aggressive wraps. This one turned on me just a hair, so I'm just going to pull it back into position. And then finally, let me go on to the last cheek, the left cheek. Okay, so now I have all of my pieces tied on. The one thing you can kind of do if you really need to is play around with them just a little bit, move them into position so you know they're all lined up and they're all equal the whole way around, and that they're showing, because you do want all those components to really show the whole way around. All right, now this is the messy part. We have to trim all this deer hair out of the way. So I'm just going to start from that cone back and start trimming around. You will definitely have to vacuum after tying this fly. Now that cone head will kind of get shifted in there. If it does, that's okay, because now I can just take my thread, start at the cone, and just lift that hair up and place it underneath the cone. Okay, so we are about 90% complete on this, and now we just have to add our final component, and that is that deer hair collar. So at this point I'm going to wrap back just a few wraps because I want to create a nice little spot here to put all of my deer hair in. So I just went back just a little bit, then I'm going to wrap to the middle of my thread, and I'm going to grab a different piece of deer hair. I'm not going to use that short and fine stuff anymore. Instead I'm going to be using that bass bug deer hair, really big fibers, lots of hollowness inside them, great for spinning. Again, I'm not going to worry about stacking these. I'm just going to grab little portions. For this one, I'm going to do it a little different. Let me zoom out and show you exactly how I do this. I'm just going to hold on to just the tips of these. I'm going to pull all this inside stuff out. You're going to notice a lot of stuff will come out. Throw that stuff away. You don't want that in your pattern. Then I'm going to take the rest, line them up. I want to make sure they're basically right in the center, and I'm going to let them go, instead of narrow up and down, I'm going to kind of let them widen out just a hair. That's going to create more spacing. It's going to give it more of that 360-degree profile with my spinning. First wrap, kind of loose, the whole way up. Second wrap, really bear it down. Turn. I do the same thing 3 more times. All the excess stuff, just hold on to just the tips. Okay, last piece. I tend to go a little sparse whenever I'm tying in these deer hair clumps. The more you tie in, the denser it will obviously be. So if you really like seeing that really dense cone head, tie in a lot more and really bear down whenever you're tying them in. Okay, that is it. I have everything created. I basically have a gigantic mess here. Let me zoom back in so you can see what's going on. Then I'm going to just kind of wiggle my thread forward so I can get to that cone head portion. Once I get up there, I'm going to pull all these deer hair fibers back. I'm just going to make a couple quick wraps directly behind my cone head. So there's 1, 2. So now I'm ready. I can just do a quick half hitch, so I know my thread is locked in. At this point, you can use a whip finishing tool, or I'll just as I tend to always use my fingers. I'm just going to use my whip finishing method here. I might again hold them all back with my left hand, and then make sure I whip finish this just directly behind that cone head. I'm going to put about 4 or 5 in there. Okay, then I'm going to trim my thread out of the way. Alright, now we are to the final portion of this fly. And this is the trickiest one, because we want to trim away all this stuff. We want it flush with the cone head, but we don't want to trim that original deer hair wing that we placed in there directly behind the collar. So this is going to be the tricky part. Your first couple cuts are the most critical because the rest will be based upon those. So what I typically do, I take my scissors and I pull everything forward until I find that original deer hair wing. Once I have it, I just cut straight back from that cone head. And then I know exactly what I can use as the base for my initial cuts. So the same thing, I'll just go around, cut. Cut. I can get this stuff out of the way easily. And remember, those deer hair pieces are going to be longer, so don't be afraid to just pick them up, separate them, and get them out of the way. Okay, and once I have all those long pieces cut out of the way, what I can do now is take my fine fly tying scissors or razor blade, it's really your choice, and now I can get it a little more flush. So I'm just going to do my initial cuts, just go the whole way around, flush it out just a little bit. Then I'm going to invert my scissors, and now I'm going to get them extremely close to this. As I'm finishing off this fly, you'll notice this definitely is a little bit more of an extensive fly. It takes a little bit more time, so you don't want to use these. Don't be afraid to use heavier tippet on this pattern. But it is a big fish pattern. Okay, and I'm going to say for the purposes of our video, that is a finished Zuddler fly. So to give you just the quick 5-second overview, we have that zonker strip, we have some marabou body, we have a little bit of ultra wire that was ribbed in, we have deer hair wing, black deer hair wing, then we have, we use some really short and fine fibers to tie in, and then finally to top it all off we have a collar out of deer hair, again black, using deer hair that's best for spinning, some of that really big and hollow stuff. So this is the finished Zuddler fly. Thanks go out to Sean Mooney. Thanks for mentioning Jordan's pattern. And also, again, special thanks go out to Jordan. This is a video response to your pattern, Jordan, and I really hope you keep up the fly tying. Finally, thanks will go out to Allen Fly Fishing for the use of their S403 streamer hook. And thanks to all of you for viewing this fly tying tutorial. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them directly on this YouTube page, or you can email me at tcamisa@gmail.com. Thanks everybody for viewing this fly tying tutorial.